All right, once again, welcome to Crypto Mondays. Can I get a round of applause for Anthony, our speaker tonight? Thank you so much all for coming out. I'm obviously not Pedro. He's not in town and his brother's sick, but my name is Luke Stokes. Happy to be here and host tonight. So let's start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your journey into crypto? I always love that question. How did you get involved in this space? And then branch into what you're up to.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So my journey into crypto is very nascent. I actually opened my first wallet about 3 months ago. So
nice.
Guilty as charged, I'm probably the last guy to ever buy a coin. However, I've been running this company and I have over a decade in the health and wellness space. I'm primarily an inventor and entrepreneur. I started the health mission that I'm on after almost losing my dad to heart disease and realizing that genetics have nothing to do with that. Epigenetics is more the cause of these things, and 70% of all chronic conditions has to do with the environment and how we're eating specifically. So a few months ago, back in February, I said, I told one of my investors, his name is Brandon Diggs, he's also known as the DeFi Guide, been friends with him for a couple of years. He comes to a lot of these events as well. And I said, Brandon, he actually turned about 35,000 into 2 million in 6 months in DeFi. He's totally a DeFi.
As a DeFi DJ,
he's a DeFi gen, 100%. So,
and all the people that came in the bear market, they're like, "What are you talking about? I just lost money, right?"
I was just like, I don't know anyone else who can actually help guide me better than you, and
nice.
let me run this idea by you. And what I realized is that the sickest folks that have diabetes for 20, 30 years. They're driving 80% of the healthcare costs. So if you walk into an employer, one of the biggest problems for these, self-insured employers is that, these type of employees are driving 80% of the healthcare costs. And it's also affecting everybody else in that population, right? They're paying the price for those sick employees. Actually, all of us are, right? And there's nothing against, I've been the person that drives that cost myself. So, I had to lose 27 pounds at one point. So, we've all been there, right? So I said, well, one of the biggest issues that those employees have is they want, funny enough, ironically enough, they want money to be incentivized in order to change. Usually they're offered a gift or rewards by the employer, but no one has ever been able to offer them actual money in a wallet for changing their behavior. But 60% have been surveyed to say, if you give us money and reduce our health insurance premiums, we will actually try to get healthy.
Then you buy more fast food, right?
Right.
So my wife, who's in the crowd, she's amazing in terms of always cooking healthy stuff for us. Like, we don't have a lot of trash because she uses real food and makes real cooking, and it's kind of amazing. And I don't think I realized how abnormal that is until I understand other people are just constantly eating out and constantly just eating stuff that's not real, and the idea that food is medicine. Literally, you've probably heard that every 7 years your whole body kind of replaces most of your cells, and where do you think that all comes from? It comes from the food you eat. So literally who you are comes from the quality and content of what you put in your pie hole.
100%.
So you've been in the health industry for a long time, or is this something that was relatively new for you? How'd you get into the health industry?
Yeah, no, so I've been, I'm 46, but I've been since my early 20s, I've been actively working out and things of that sort. I did go through a phase where I got injured, gained about 20-something pounds, was dating the wrong person who had a sweet tooth. That's never a good mix. If your values are health and you're dating a person with a sweet tooth, it's not gonna work out. But great person, we just didn't align in values, and I ended up having to charge myself and find myself, I lost myself in this wrong path, which also is sort of this moment of awareness that I had. If one of the first things that you need to change if you want to get healthy is your environment. So if your significant other isn't on board with you and he or she eats pizza, you're trying to eat salads, it's only a matter of time before you're going to have a few slices of pizza and things like that. So one of the first things we focus on is changing someone's environment, like literally their pantry.
So what's the name of the company or the project? What do you guys call yourselves, and how are you actually doing that kind of incentivization thing? And another part of that I want to ask relates to this kind of motivational psychology. A lot of people talk about, I know with creative activities, generally when you directly incentivize it extrinsically, it goes away. But when it's intrinsically motivated, you have so many stories of people, they try, and then just something clicks, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, now I'm doing it. Even though they had all these other opportunities, all these other people encouraging, something happens intrinsically. So do you think, tell us more about your company, but I also want to know about that extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation and how that impacts the results.
Yeah, so to answer the first part of the question, I think that well, actually, let's talk about the topic for those who don't know what we're talking about yet. So the topic of this discussion, I aptly named it or suggested that we call it the future of decentralized health. Not decentralized healthcare. There's been many attempts to decentralize healthcare, and I'm sure you've seen projects and businesses that try to do this. The issue with attempting to decentralize healthcare is you're dealing with a ton of red tape. You're dealing with fragmented ecosystems, Epic, electronic health records, medical records, and that's not what we're doing.
All that kind of stuff,
all sorts of stuff. It's just, it doesn't work. So those projects will most likely fail. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's underway. There's large efforts to make all of these systems communicate better with each other, but it's going to take a while. Nothing in healthcare moves slow. I mean, those guys are still wearing suits, right? Like, I literally may have to wear a suit one day to walk into one of these insurance companies, which I don't ever want to do ever again. But I may have to do it because that's just what you do when you're in healthcare. It's that old school, right?
So what's the name of the project?
So the project is called Fitly Health, and we're the first Web3 precision nutrition platform. And essentially what we're doing is incentivizing employees, self-insured employees, to monetize their health data, which they're already giving away for free. All of us are giving away our health data for free. But our health data is worth between $1,500 to $5,000 per year. Every
Per person?
year. Per person.
Wow.
If you have a rare disease or a genetic disposition to a rare disease, there's been cases where people have paid $20,000 for that piece of information.
Sign me up. Where's it? All right. This sounds like easy money.
Yeah, well, and so if you think about other implications for impact, I mean, we all have a cell phone. There's folks out there that may not have a job, but they have a cell phone. They have a finger that they can strap a little Aura ring to, and maybe they want to monetize their data. Maybe we do away with a basic income type of a stipend where, maybe their data makes them that $1,000 a year that they need to, not live in poverty. So it's very interesting. And I see a future where we are going to monetize our health data, but also use it more for a predictive type of approach. So if you were to approach your doctor today and say, "Doc, show me my records for the last 5 years and analyze it for me," the doc would probably say, "Dude, I just remember you were here last quarter. I have no idea. You had high blood pressure, you had a high A1C, but what do you mean?" Well, can you tell me when I might die?" He can't. But on our platform, you'll be able to upload data for the last 5-10 years, and we'll be able to predict relatively accurately.
And this is what actuary tables do for insurance companies, right? They're tracking all this stuff.
100%.
We know pretty close when you're going to die. It's a little freaky, but we're going to give you these rates based on that. Yeah.
Well,
and you can get better rates, right? If you actually start living healthy, stop smoking, stop drinking so much, all that kind of stuff.
But
I'm not here, of course. Definitely tip your waitresses, order plenty.
But they're also missing a lot of data. So one of the pieces, so most of those actuaries have data from the centralized healthcare part, from the EMRs, the doctor visits, Epic, right? Just an electronic medical record, one of the biggest. And so, but what they don't have is lifestyle data. What happens?
Is it individualized as well? Like the data they have, is it on each individual
What they do is what they're doing is actually a little unsavory.
Okay.
So they have data brokers and buyers that are literally trying to figure out what are you doing in the home, and if they need to identify you, so they have you identified on the centralized side, right? In most cases, if they bypassed HIPAA compliance, but what they do to re-identify you on the lifestyle side is they just need about 15 data points.
Yeah.
And that's why, I never put my real age anywhere, never put, just all these little data points. It just takes 15 data points for them to say, this is Brody.
I've heard stories
and he's in Puerto Rico, and he wears a funny hat. No,
I've heard the stories of based on your Netflix queue and what the things you like on Netflix that can track all kinds of stuff about you. And with AI, obviously, that's 100%. Even accelerating. So how do you, I'd like to know specifically, how is your platform different? How are you guys taking a decentralized approach to this medical data? I assume like Brittany Kaiser and other friends of ours in our community are talking about own your own data and how important that is. And so what are you doing to protect people in that? I assume that's part of the play, while still getting the value and the benefit, because obviously they need access to the raw data. If it's encrypted and signed by my private key, I assume these are all parts of decentralization. So how does that play out on what you guys are doing, and how is it different than, as you mentioned before, other decentralized plays that have tried to do this?
Yeah, so I think the other decentralized plays that I've seen predominantly are trying to disrupt the healthcare side of that data, the centralized systems, right? And basically going after patient information and all of those electronic records. It's quite a task. What we're doing is going through the employer, right? They already have corporate wellness programs, so they're very familiar with these programs. They have an enrollment issue, so a lot of, like I said, these 20% of employees, they're also very scared to share their data with the employer because they fear, because it's been done in the past, that the employer or the insurance companies will raise the insurance premiums once they see their data, right? So a lot of employers are like, screw that, I have diabetes, I'm not letting my employer know that shit because it's gonna go up by another whatever, right? So same thing, if you drive recklessly, you're not gonna let Tesla insurance, you're not gonna sign up for the Tesla insurance. So, which is why I wouldn't sign up for Tesla insurance. I like to speed a little bit, I'm gonna be honest. I like to risk. But anyway, so one of the things that we're doing different, we're using Web3 in 3 ways. One is to securely monetize their data, the employees' data, self-insured employees' data, and allow for those transactions to be safely shared with those data brokers and researchers.
And what do you mean by that, safely shared? Is it encrypted, or what does that mean?
So it is encrypted, right? And all of the data is actually in a GDPR system through AWS, which is a HIPAA-compliant hosting service that we use. But then it also sits on the blockchain, right? And we're also using the second way in which we're using Web3 is through Polygon ZK EVM. So there's a privacy layer there. It's virtually, unhackable. So
can you talk a little bit more about the ZK part of it? I mean, I'm a technology guy. I've been in technology for a long time. And I remember the first time people tried to explain to me ZK snarks and all this kind of like, homomorphic encryption and all these big crazy terms where it's like essentially you can have something that nobody knows, and you don't have to tell it to them, but they can go through a process where they can know that you know it. And that's about the simplest way I could explain it.
Well,
so how are you guys actually using that tech? And can you explain it in a way that makes sense, where it's like, here's information that you, and another example that I hear often when people talk about ZK technology is like, when I go and I want to buy a beer, they don't need to know my birth date. They just need to know legally, am I over 21?
Sure.
So they can ask a yes or no question to some type of system that's a black box, and it can just spit back yes, no. As opposed to saying, oh, he was born here, and here's his birth date, and here's his mother's maiden name, and all this other stuff.
Right. Well, so I'm not going to pretend to be the expert. So that question is a question for my co-founder and VP of Web3, Brandon. So I stay at about 1,000 feet. He'll go down to 100 feet and geek out with George and things like that over there. So, I definitely am not going to pretend to know the inner workings of ZK EVM. But I know that Polygon is already nearly coming out of the beta test with it. The technology is coming to fruition.
So if I could, based on conversations you've had, if I understand correctly about this, there's a way that you can take your data, encrypt it, which just means make it private, and on these layer 1 or Polygons, kind of a hybrid layer 2-ish, a way that at the base layer, it's completely secure. Meaning if you trust the entire blockchain at all, you can trust that data is completely private, and then you can selectively expose aspects of the information, or more importantly, informational requests to that information without exposing the information to other people. That's kind of how I understand it. So it's like that example of the, consent to buy a beer is one, but there's also could be ones where, is this person have a susceptibility to XYZ, so I can give them this medication without having to reveal, oh, by the way, they have this other disease and this other disease that we like, ooh,
correct.
I don't want anyone to know that kind of thing.
Correct, and again, that's the high level understanding that I have. Cool. Another thing that we're doing is when these data brokers or researchers ask us for this information, the analytics, they submit an analytics profile. So we're not giving them the raw data ever. So they tell us how they want this data. We're mining it, packaging it, so they never get to see the raw data. It's another way for us to protect our users' data as well.
And that's disconnected, I assume, for personally identifiable information?
100% for that reason, yeah. Now, by the way, because all of the folks that are going to be on our platform have full control of their data, there are brokers that will offer more money to identify yourself. We want you to have control. So you may get a ding that says, Brody, they're offering you $20,000 because they know,
they see the genetic marker
or something. Yeah, they see the marker.
Interesting.
And would you be willing to sell that information and identify yourself for a certain amount of time? And you can say, sure, unidentified 10 grand, identified 20 grand. Maybe you need the money, but it's completely up to us. At this point, they're doing this anyway without our consent.
Yeah.
So.
And it's like definitely better than selling a kidney or something else. But I think it's one of these privacy concerns a lot of people have when they look at what's actually going on. Like my friend Craig Sellers working on keychain.org, and they have this idea that you could selectively kind of have your own profile, your own identity, and expose aspects of it. And some people are like, oh no, people are going to do horrible things with that. And I'm like, just like you said, they're already doing it, just in private.
Yeah.
And some of the critiques of the blockchain space I've seen, and some of a lot of it actually is definitely justified. But there have been situations where different hacks or different really silly behavior happens and people get all up in arms like, man, this whole crypto space is such a scam. It's like, no, actually it's way worse in centralized finance, but just most people don't know about it.
Yes.
But then you have like Patrick Burke and other people like come out and say, these are the biggest scammers in the world in Wall Street. So some of this is just going to be exposing what is.
100%.
And then people are like, whoa, that seems kind of scary, but it's, again, probably better than what's being done in private.
I love that you said that. We're literally exposing centralized healthcare for what it is, because it ultimately, when we have these populations within a large employer, eventually it's a community of this population that can then say, you know what, we've got the buying power, we've got the data, and now we can come in and create somewhat of a DAO, but offer these DeFi products with, now we can say, let's offer a life insurance policy with the most incredible benefits ever, because we understand what this population specifically is doing. So it's a tailored DeFi solution for a specific population, right? That's decided to take control of their own health. And so, seeing healthcare for what it is in a centralized sick care system, it's something that we're super excited to, obviously we're not trying to ruffle any feathers or make enemies, but we're certainly not working with unsavory data buyers. Anybody with an ICOE violation, I won't name the pharmaceutical companies, but you know who they are, right? Where they will not be on our platform, so they're not going to be allowed to buy data. We're just not going to work with those people.
You said there were 3 things. Did you cover the third one as well?
So it was the secured payment processing through the Hedera blockchain. So it's a multi-chain approach. The ZK EVM. The third thing that we're doing is creating phygital NFTs, 2 of them within this process. What does that mean? That these. Is anybody here familiar with phygital NFTs?
Phygital, I'm not
phygital
sure if
NFTs.
okay, we got
Right,
Justin
cool.
knows phygital, but
So,
that's a new one for me, I think.
Yeah, so these NFTs, typically there are 2 types. You have an NFT that's the one that traditional NFT that we're used to, right? So the artist NFT, JPEG, exactly. And while they do have utility in some cases, the phygital NFTs actually have more utility, especially if that physical, it's a physical object or a thing that's solving and being used to solve a problem. So our company produces a device called SmartPlate.
Gotcha. Okay, that was going to lead into my other question. It's just like the ring or the little watch. Like if you don't have a secure device, you can't really know that I went wing foiling and got a great exercise unless you trust the data collection mechanism.
Correct.
If I can fake that and get paid to do it, obviously scammers will. So that makes perfect sense. So you guys have an actual physical device that I assume has been encoded with some type of key structure that can't be faked.
100%. Yeah, nice. And we've already sold a few of these NFTs. We have them on Uniquely and OpenSea right now. There are 2 types. So Fitly's been around since 2015 when we launched on Kickstarter, featured on Shark Tank. But in 2021 we actually did our soft launch. We sold over 4,000 paying, acquired 4,000 paying members, grew 444%, 90% retention rate with this particular device. So this is a device that has
or a ring.
No, it's an actual plate that has 3 weight sensors, and it uses AI to identify your food. And within 3 seconds, it identifies and weighs everything you're eating. And then it gives you real-time feedback to remove carbohydrates, add carbohydrates.
Wow.
There's no other precision nutrition tool that does this. So think of it as MyFitnessPal on steroids. We do everything that MyFitnessPal does, but we are 30% more accurate at every meal.
That's freaking awesome. Like when you were saying that it really does come down to epigenetics, meaning your environment, the food you take, you mean that seriously. It's not just, oh, well, you did your 30 minutes of cardio but you just had a freaking like horrible meal and your cells are starving for real nutrition, and they're just stuffing a bunch of freaking corn syrup all over your body because they don't know what the hell to do with it.
100%. And so what we did now, we took that and we said in the last 24 months, something really interesting has been going on in the healthcare space, and that's the gut microbiome. So now we realize there was a study in 2020 called the Predict 1 study, and they took 1,106 subjects. Out of those 1,106 subjects, 640, I believe, were twins. 260 of those were identical twins. The interesting part of the study is that in the identical twins, they found that when they gave them the same exact food, they had a different metabolic response to the same exact food. This is 99.9% shared DNA.
Wow.
So that tells you that the DNA and genes, they're good for certain things. I'm not discounting that.
So nurture more than nature.
But the 100, so the environment is where it's at. So it's happening in our gut microbiome. And so now, how do we take the world's most precise food tracker with what we know is the world's most precise indicator of metabolic response, the gut microbiome? So we've combined gut microbiome analysis, generative predictive AI with the smart plate, and that's the second NFT.
Wow.
But it's also that solution which we sell to employers for $2,000 per employee. Why does it cost $2,000 per employee? It also includes a one-to-one registered dietitian for 12 months. So you get gut microbiome analysis, smart plate, the predictive metabolic response AI, and a one-on-one dietitian for 12 months.
And I would imagine you guys have done studies on like, well, these people are not sick as often, right? They don't miss work because they, their immune system's wrecked and they got the flu or whatever, right? I imagine this just has to naturally flow out of this, right?
So what you're describing is the additional cost of workplace absenteeism and things like that, right? The ancillary outcomes of not being healthy.
Yeah, if somebody's got diabetes or somebody's like really unhealthy, they're not going to be productive, they got mind fog, all this stuff.
Without counting those costs, it costs an employer $15,000 for every sick employee with a metabolic disorder. Speaking namely about diabetes, right? So if it costs them $15,000 a year in healthcare costs, and we charge $2,000, we can save them between $5,000 and $7,500 per employee. It's a massive business, massive ROI for them, and we're excited about these NFTs in this community specifically. And again, I'm not here to pretend that I'm an expert in this space. I literally bought it was bought for me. I didn't even buy it because I couldn't go through the MetaMask. I mean, I don't know how you guys do it. I am not a crypto geek, but there's no,
we're trying to work on
I'm
that.
a user experience geek. I design things, I'm a creator. And I wish that I was involved early on because I would have said, dude, that user experience fucking sucks. Like, how are you getting to a billion? How are you getting to a billion users? You're never going to get to a billion users. I literally had to say, dude, Brandon, take care of this shit for me. I don't have time for this.
And a big part of that is, I remember I was doing websites in 1996. The internet was super hard in the beginning. Like, it's just a matter of time and adoption.
It will. And I'm not trying to shit on the industry, but we need to get Apple involved. Come on, like why weren't they involved in the user experience? But anyway, so one of the cool things that we're doing, because these type of employees, they're like me. They're not in the crypto space. So part of this process is they don't have to worry about off-ramping. They're getting paid in fiat. We're doing all of that through the blockchain, and so they just get fiat currency, and their wallet builds up. In terms of, for this community, what we think is really cool is these two NFTs have a real potential. We've been, for the last 48 hours, we've been racking our brains and discussing whether we want to launch a coin or not. And what we've decided, and we came across a really unique hybrid of the two, where, what do crypto investors really want? They want something with a lot of speculation that has a lot of high upside potential. But if you can combine the two, where what if there's speculation, but there's utility, tons of it, and there's a real business behind these NFTs, not your JPEG memes, right? And so that's what we've done. So the Fitly Health NFT has a value of $2,000. We're selling that for half the price to investors for $997, about $1,000. But the return on that potential, when you get that Fitly Health NFT, you unlock the health data pool where each NFT holder gets 5% kickback of the whole of that data. So said differently, imagine us having 1 million users. We take that lower range of the remember I said $1,500 to $5,000 is what everybody's data is worth? So let's say, conservatively, we get $2,000 per user, right, in this ecosystem. That's $2 billion once we get to 1 million users, $2 billion market pool, of which 5% goes to all the NFT holders. The cool thing about this is we're only minting 50,000 NFTs ever for the whole lifetime of the company. So it doesn't matter how big the company gets, we will never mint more than 50,000 of these NFTs. So when you think about what the return on that is, we did the math on this. You do the $100 million divided by, assuming that all of those 50,000 NFTs are actually, have been being used, it comes out to $2,000 per user, right? If it's a 200% APY, which is, at the end of the day, when you think about it, if you're a degen, right?
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Right?
Sounds
Even
great.
100% APY is, right? So, but here's the cool thing about this is we're not launching an actual coin. We don't have the exposure of being a security. And with everything that's happening with the SEC and all of that, and being in healthcare, we decided we don't want to take that risk. So it's a much safer bet and still gives you the ability to gamble.
I got one or two
it.
more questions, and then we're going to do questions. Actually, got about 5 minutes, so we're going to do questions in the audience. So if you've got a burning question, please be thinking about it, and I'll come down with the mic in just a second. What are the ways, a lot of this community is really excited about open source, and they really want open everything, meaning everyone can participate. The reason Bitcoin's so amazing is there is no CEO, there's no Satoshi anymore. It's just free and clear. And there's some really beauty when some people say decentralized, that's actually what they mean. Meaning there is no actual company, there is no controlling interest. Obviously, that's not the case here. But you guys are, it sounds like, interested in the decentralized component. You are putting data on a permissionless decentralized blockchain with Hedera, and Hedera is a kind of permission, but it sounds like you're in that hybrid space. Where do you see the future of this? Do you see a version where, kind of like Tesla opening up its patents, or so, do you see a version in the future where this becomes successful enough that there's a large enough pie that anybody can start doing what you're doing, and you're going to welcome that because it improves the health of the whole planet? Like, what's your end game decentralization goal? If there's only 50,000, there's obviously more people than 50,000. So what's the long-term goal?
Well, so that's just 50,000 of these NFTs. Obviously, we're going to continue to grow the business beyond that. Just to put it in perspective, there's 107 million diabetics that work that are self-insured self-insured diabetics that work for these companies, right? So that's a serviceable, obtainable market of about 78 billion. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with a company called Verta. They have 5 million users. Omada Health, 570,000 users or 470,000 users. The market hasn't even fully been captured anywhere near close. There's room for like 10 other competitors.
Sounds amazing.
10 other people. Amazing. So we definitely take a mindset. One of my values as a company is we collaborate first and we compete second. If I approach another company and I say, hey, I love what you're doing, let's work together, and they close off on me, and then it's like, well, now I know these guys don't want to collaborate, they want to compete. But I always approach a company, so I have that mentality of collaboration. I think that it's a matter of how companies are going to react to us, how the health system, which is centralized, are going to react to us, how pharma companies are going to react. But I see a decentralized form factor in creating these communal DAOs. Eventually, these communities will have the power once they are using all of these wearables, unlocking all of these kits, and generating all this data. And I feel like that's where that opportunity exists for them to have the purchasing power and say, this is,
So where can people find out more?
Cool. So the website is fitly.com, spelled FITLY.com. And if you want to reach out, have any questions, my email is anthony@fitly.com. And my Instagram handle is SmartPlate CEO.
Awesome. Let's give a round of applause to Anthony and Fitly. Thank you so much for coming out. Anyone got a burning question? We've got a couple minutes left of camera time. Now's your chance. He covered it that well. Come on, people. Any questions about decentralized health, NFTs?
Oh, there's a question back there.
I'll get you a second. Carlos.
Thank you, Luke. Hey, awesome. Bunch of pros, not many cons, just a little how. So how you mixing AWS and CK zero knowledge? Because I understand how to gather the data,
Yep.
but how to read the data might be something a little bit interesting.
To read the data for which side? To read the data for the data buyer or to read the data for us internally? What do you mean?
From that data buyer.
Okay, so the data buyer has to submit an analytic profile. So let's say a research company wants to do autism for children and they're trying to understand the gut microbiome for this specific research. They're going to submit the cohort that they want. We're looking for the adults with children aged between age 35 and 65. They'll submit their requirements, the types of biomarkers potentially that they're looking specific to autism, and they'll submit this analytic profile, and essentially it's their program, which then we on the back end through our API will mine the data and provide them with that mined data as is. Does that make sense? Almost in the form of a report.
Yeah, so but on that sense, is it decentralized or they gotta go through a process? You know, to allow people to read the data. So
well, it is decentralized in the sense we are making it searchable, indexable, right? From our end and providing it to them. Eventually we will create an API where they can do the searching. So phase one, we are doing the indexing and searching in-house. Phase two, the API will connect to and from, a two-way connection, but they will never ever get raw data from us.
Nice.
Yeah,
Got another question over here.
Yeah.
I apologize if I missed this, but so in the beginning you said that when people were polled, they said if they were incentivized in some way that they might change their behaviors.
Yeah.
So is I'm not going to use reward because that's got a bad connotation in the health industry, but if their financial benefit, it's not per patient then, right? Because it's aggregated data, so is it only realized for those that are members of a group that are under an employer involved in the program, or?
You're talking about the actual annual passive income that someone can generate from their own data?
I guess I didn't get the connection there. If it was just paid or employees of a participating company or something.
Yeah, there's two things happening, right? So if you want to use the program, by the way, individuals can use this program without going through an employer. We're just not marketing to consumers. But we, as a business, we're going through self-insured employers because they have this big pain point that they need to solve. To answer your question, the data is individualized. So everyone's data here in this room is worth between $1,500, and this is according to research from Ernst & Young in 2020, between $1,500 and $5,000. And this is health data records, right? It doesn't even include sort of IoT data. We think our data is going to be more valuable for other reasons where we're connecting way more devices and test kits. But to answer your question, it's $1,500 to $5,000 per year. If you use the technology that we're providing, the smart plate, the gut microbiome, and you're using this on a daily basis, you can then sell that data. If you connect more things to yourself, the Aura Ring, maybe use a vagus nerve stimulator, you're tracking your sleep. The more data you are starting to track, the more you're going to be able to extract the value of, and your wallet's just going to go up and up and up from your own data.
Okay, you answered
Yeah.
the second question.
Cool.
Awesome. I think we're running
All right.
out of battery time. Let me check in. Do we have time for one more question, or are we good? We're good?
I think we're good.
All right,
Oh,
we're
there's
good.
one.
All right. So you're going to be here afterwards?
Yeah, I'll hang out for a little
Questions?
bit. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's give another round of applause for Anthony. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. Got a cool crowd. And we got to do like a picture for the camera. Pedro always likes to do a picture, right? Let's do a picture.
Okay, let's go.